Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the wonderful leadership development webinar with the Humble Associates and our wonderful guest, which we'll talk about further. Myself and Arif, we love to have you here as always. Let us know where you're coming from, and let us know what are you interested in today. We hopefully will have quite a great conversation. But today, what we're talking about is how do you manage to make a proper business case for investing in learning and development, and how to actually practically convince your leaders to do so. It is quite something to manage to get it done. So hopefully this is something that you will enjoy. But before we go there, let me introduce our wonderful guest, Sam Goodman. He's a great speaker about this particular topic, and I always love your content, Sam. I've seen you speaking about that, and this is why we invited you in. But say a few words about yourself.
Thank you very much to both of you for having me. I'm the Learning Development Manager for ITP Energize, which is an environmental consultancy company. My background, though, is based in education through primary and secondary, outdoor education as well for over 10 years. And 2 years ago, transitioned into the wonderful world of learning and development. And still learning, still finding things, taken across staff development from teachers into sort of private sector and consultancy, but really enjoying it.
And you're hopefully a perfect person to explain how do you convince people to actually get there. But before we go there, there's one question we always ask our audience, and it's a simple one to answer. So we've introduced ourselves, you probably know us, and now you know Sam a bit more. We would love to know who you are. So to answer this simple question, it's actually incredibly easy to do. Arif, would you be able to guide our audience?
Yeah, as always, we've got a choice question. Select the letter that best applies to you. If you're an L&D or HR professional and or a leader, A is for you. You can give off some letters that map to your profession, your background. We'll have to have all of our wonderful audience interacting with us. So I'll be on any questions that are flooded, and if it's appropriate, I'll bring conversation to you.
Indeed, and thank you much. I will go to see that. I'm going to comment just yet. So I'll move on to what's going on and what's it about. There's a big question for you. I'm hoping that my button will actually work. Go back. Yes. So that's an interesting thing we've got from many of our clients, many of the people we've been talking with, which is, why do you find it so difficult to convince leaders to invest in L&D, right? So when we're talking with people and the L&D practitioners, the L&D managers really have great ideas, really want to add value, but I find it very difficult to convince people. Sam, what's your perspective on that?
I've thought about this question multiple times over the past few weeks, and sort of thinking about my time in education, it sort of certain things do cross over. I think with this sort of world we're in with learning development, big one is time. I don't want to focus on that because it's the thing that comes up all the time, funny enough, and you could go off it. I actually hate the word now, ban it if I can. I think one of the reasons we do struggle though is because we're not directly fee earning people. We're not directly bringing money into the business. And I think that sometimes links into obviously all the challenges we have regarding ROI. But one of the other ones I think is just bad experiences of learning.
Ooh,
I think people just put a barrier up sometimes with learning, whether that's bad experiences in school. You look at Gen Z are coming through their university experience for all of them, well, majority of them through COVID was this. There was no university experience that a lot of us have had. So I think that plays into a big part of trying to get people excited and curious about learning, that if we're going right to the top, it's a battle. It can be a battle. I remember when I was teaching, there was big issues regarding maths because parents had such a bad time through sort of the 60s and the 70s, early 80s of math, and they go, I hate it.
Yeah.
So when their children were born, they couldn't help them with homework. They went, yeah, I can't do math. Can't do math. I'm not going to help you. And their attitude surrounding maths was really negative, and they're still battling to try and get out of that sort of bad environment. So yeah, I think the connotations of learning, I think, can also be a big challenge.
It's quite a big thing, right? So, this is like the core thing that L&D practitioners and L&D managers do. And yet this stands in a way, right? So that's an interesting thing. But if that's one of the big problems, what is it that one can do with it, right? Because if you already have a preconceived notion about learning, how can you dispel it?
We're in a digital world, and I think utilising learning methodologies that work, making things contextual, using digital technology that helps engage, and breaking down those barriers goes a long way. I came into a company where training was very generic, PowerPoints, sort of live PowerPoints, and then go and watch it later on if you want to go back or if you've missed it. And one of the first things I came in, I used a platform called Miro, which I think a lot of people will know about, introduced anonymous polls, loads of different things that people went, oh, never done this before. This is new. This is refreshing. And then slowly trying things and experimenting with different things that work and show learning in a different light. I think one of the things that we've got to be as L&D practitioners don't be scared to try things.
Yeah.
There is so much out there. Doesn't mean everything works. Try and find what works for you in your context, but go and have a play, go and experiment. I don't think we spend enough time experimenting. And one of the things I enjoy the most is finding something new and seeing if it works and how I'm going to put that into practice. Using focus groups, having conversations. It's the fun stuff to try, and I don't think we sometimes do enough of that. But you just got to think, if you find that one little nugget that could change the dynamics of how people view learning, you're opening the door slightly. You might open the door wide, but that crack to show that there's a little bit of change coming. It's fun, it's exciting. Keep coming with me. Can go such a long way.
It's quite brilliant of an answer, and I love that indeed. So, Arif, what is it that you're enjoying, and anything from you to add?
Yeah, no, this is really interesting to hear, Sam. Thank you. And I'm wondering, part of this fear thing maybe leaders have, you said bad experiences. Is there also something around fear of spending the money and obviously not getting the return in their view, whatever that return is? And it's around really expectation management. Is that what it comes back down to as well for some of these leaders?
Definitely. I think that's part of it. And I think this whole, as we said before, the challenge regarding ROI is massive. But I think we're going to go on to this, I think, at some point regarding top-down buy-in.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you've got someone at the top who values it deep down and gets it, you've got more of a way to work. But if you've got someone at the top who's just like, it's a tick box exercise, it's very hard to break down. And I think that also comes down to the generational differences within companies. I've spoken to a company recently that have got an older generation, and they just don't value learning at all. They don't care. So there's different challenges there to break down. Whereas I've gone thankfully into a company that really value it and love sort of refreshing side of things. And the reason it brought me in was because of that. But this is where these talks are quite hard.
No, I get it, right? And it's actually quite a good thing that you're in a place that's great. And it's also sad to hear that, when it comes to these leaders, it's a problem, especially older generation. But what is it that leaders actually want to hear when it comes to L&D? What is it that will actually open their wallets and their heads to invest and learn, right? What have you seen working, Sam?
It's been a right mix. I've written down here the generic, I want an easy fix. Just make it easy, just get it done. Just quick, just give me the answer. How do we sort this? There must be something that you can throw out. Surely there's a course that you can just recommend. And it's not as easy as that. And what I found works is if you actually just care, listen to them, invest in their thoughts, their ideas, upskill them, improve their understanding of what learning is about and how to learn. But again, it depends on the senior leaders, obviously. But what I found is challenging senior leaders and their thinking has been very interesting and worthwhile. And I don't think that we do that enough, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest things that we can have is to help them. So what do senior leaders want to hear when it comes to L&D? We can help you. I can help you. I can help improve. I'm a part of the way to improve. I'm not the full part, but I will be here to support you in your journey and what you want to achieve.
That's a very good point. Yeah, Gareth, go ahead.
It's a listening activity, right? You've got to, from an L&D point of view, really take the active role, sit down, listen to their problems, empathize, acknowledge, and really know how to categorize those needs or define those needs clearly enough, right? So that you can provide the right answer.
Definitely, because sometimes they come with what they think is the answer.
Yes.
When actually it's not. And I've had that, the way I've changed how I approach supporting leaders in what they need support on. My first point is, let's have a conversation. Let's chat, let's discuss, because what you think might not be the right way. I need to know a bit more. I'm going to work with you. We're going to do this together. I'm going to improve your understanding of learning and how we can come about this challenge. So next time it automatically comes sort of we did this last time, it worked. Maybe we could do this again.
Yeah.
But I completely agree, Arif. It goes down to listening. We need to hear what they say, and then we use our expertise to help that process and get going.
And it's a nice one because, for instance, for myself, what I've seen is, for instance, vulnerability working quite well, because you always need to get your proverbial foot into the goal, right? So making sure that, you can only help them if they give you the time for you to actually do anything. So it's actually showing, look, right, I'm going to promise you this will not take much, but give me a chance. And this is what we sometimes do as providers, or I'm sure that, and we help L&D managers do that too, to actually get through the door and get this process started. But thank you for the wonderful perspective, Sam. But there's another thing I wanted to talk about, which is a lot of the times when we get and talk with leaders in the space of business, and when we support the L&D managers when convincing leaders, the topic of metrics comes along, right? So how do you measure the ROI of what you're trying to do? You're asking for money, you're asking for investment to run this leadership program, to run this learning program. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, Sam, what metrics have you seen working and you would recommend to people?
It is so tricky. It is hard, and that you can see why this comes up as a topic all the time. I think a big one for us was retention, staff retention, especially in our graduate development program. They wanted to bring in graduates and retain them, and we've done that very well. And that was a great metric to say, look, we've had 20 graduates come through over the past 2 years, 18 have stayed, the 2 have left, have actually just left the industry altogether, it just wasn't for them. And then you really see sort of the power behind what we can do. The other side of things, and
it's a good one, actually.
I'm very mindful regarding data, because I've come from education where putting a child as a number and as a piece of data doesn't work. It creates a lot of problems. So I'm very skeptical around data. However, I am doing it. I mentioned earlier, sort of going to be crunching data regarding a line manager survey that I've been conducting. But feedback is huge. And I think just having those personable human conversations with people to gain feedback is such an important tool to use in convincing our sort of influence.
So is there so there's the hard numbers, and then there's the soft, as you said, element to it, like as you said, feedback and written answers to surveys and that kind of stuff. In your experience, do you find is that enough to convince leaders to say, let's pursue X over Y because our cohort demographic, whoever we're working with, have said something? Is that enough, or is it harder than that? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
No.
Sam.
It is hard, and I'm in a unique position because the people that I work for value everything that we've done because they've never had an L&D function, so it's been mainly positive. However, from conversations from other people, listening to webinars, it's not as easy as that. And I think some just want the data, they just want the numbers because it's seen as money, and like I was going back seeing as a tick box exercise. And I would say that if people are in a company that just see L&D as a tick box exercise, you might need to have conversations to convince otherwise to break that mindset down, and change that into a way of saying, look, this is what we've delivered, this is the feedback, this is where it's important, and not present it as data.
One interesting,
easier said than done, but
No, I hear you, and maybe just to add to bolster that conversation, we had a conversation with a consultant in employee experience not that long ago on our podcast, and one of the big things he tries to do around employee experience, not the same thing, but there's some synergy there around needs. And getting the people who are experiencing problems in the workplace, so employees, to come in front of them and talk about, here are the problems I'm experiencing in my employee experience, here's the challenges, and based on that, can you design something to alleviate that problem? So I think there's some synergy there around maybe from an L&D point of view, L&D managers and staff professionals maybe thinking about how do you get the voices that you're trying to support to vocalize the problems better so that you can then use that as an ammunition with the senior leaders to say, this is why we have a problem, this is why it needs solving. Just a thought.
I don't think that you can have one tool. It's got to be a multitude. And one of the things I wrote down when I was thinking about this question was regarding client testimonies, and actually having a look at what clients give as feedback and seeing if there's any keywords mentioned within their feedback that you could also use. Because funnily enough, I'm in the middle of just starting out some training for a team that have had some constructive feedback, and it's all around communication. So when I've just delivered a communication workshop over the past sort of 2 years to various sort of teams and the whole company, etc. I'm going, that's interesting. And I needed to know a bit more information and pinpoint where the problems were. And I said, look, is it the graduates? Because we've spent a lot of time on the graduates with project management training, etc. Thankfully, it wasn't the graduates or juniors. So I was like, great, that's brilliant, because I've spent a lot of time and I've invested. But it just shows that people are not applying what they've been learning. And actually, that's me to reflect and go, well, why? Okay, so we need to caveat that with supplementary training. So and that just came from client testimonials. So I think that's another way that you could look at gaining some data.
Which is actually, maybe not hard data, but at least is evidence-based, and you've got something written, right? But the interesting thing is, you've mentioned something just previously when it comes to like L&D being just a tick box exercise, which is, if you're in this kind of organization, it is a bit of a problem. So I guess the organizational culture has a huge influence over it. So the question we have next is, what role does the organizational culture play in enabling this, right? So you've talked about the organization culture you probably don't want to work with, but what is the organization culture we're looking for?
I think you need the term growth mindset always comes to mind in situations like this, but it's on a different level of just sort of curiosity and wanting to improve. You look at, and I'm definitely not going into talking about AI, but you look how quickly technology is advancing, that you have to be continually learning. Otherwise, people are going to come in who are way sort of beyond you. So culture I find is massive, and I've been very fortunate to be sort of essentially like left to my own devices, but it works because I'm very reflective. So I've sort of reflected on what works, what doesn't work, go have conversations with key stakeholders, and that's part of it. It's an organizational culture. It has to include the key people in the organization. It has to include everybody. So you need to be speaking to people and saying, what did you think of this training? And what would you like? And I was constantly doing that. What do you like? What would you want to do? I did a learning development update. Funnily enough, it started weekly. It went to fortnightly. It went to monthly. But within those updates, there was always personal development polls. And in those polls, I was always asking, what would you like to do next? What have you found important? What have you found as something that you need to improve on, etc.? And I've always tried to capture those thoughts, but that's encompassed everybody. I think trust is a massive one, that learning development, you're trusted to do what you've been brought in to do, and trust and value your thoughts, your opinions, and what you can bring. But I said previously, and it goes into this, it's got to go from the top down. So things like role modeling, buy-in, it has to go from the top down. Otherwise, why is someone down here not going to do what you really need them to do if the person above them who also needs it is just going, not fast?
That's a good point. Arif, any perspective on that?
No, I'm just enjoying listening to Sam describe that. And then, but the top down bit is probably the challenge, isn't it? And maybe that's why we got to the next slide around taking control. I think there is something to be said about that,
right?
Which is, how, if you're in a leadership role to some extent anyway, you've been brought in, you've got a skill set, you've got some experience, you've been asked to make some decisions of some kind. So how can you take better control about the conversations you're having, who you're talking to, what you're saying? Like I said earlier about really understanding needs, being empathetic with the right people. There's a lot to be said for that, but I'm sure, Sam,
what
you want to
happens
add.
is, many times we see L&D managers putting themselves in a position of order takers instead of actually being there, taking control and driving the narrative. You've been quite successful, Sam. So what experience would you share? What tips would you give to people to actually take control, not take back control and go down to, but what about this one?
I liken this to what I did earlier on this year, where training was being delivered without me realizing it. And I had to put my hands up and say, I should have done this earlier, and I'm sorry I didn't. So I was owning my mistakes. But I said, training can't continue the way it's the way it's going. And my response was, I'm the expert in learning and development. I'm the expert in training, building it out, delivering it. That's why I've been brought into the company. If I needed to do something that you do and I was going out, I would ask you. But for some reason, everybody seems to think that they can just deliver it. There's so much more to it. My brain works a lot differently to someone else because of my background in education, outdoor teaching, staff development, learning methodologies. Everything runs through my head as soon as someone says, I need to deliver training. This is the problem. Or this is what we want to achieve. So I said, I'm the expert. You've got to trust me on this. So the moment that you want to do training, we need to have a conversation. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not going to, I might help build it, but we're going to discuss it. And it's kind of like an internal consultancy. And what happened there was, I think there was that realization of like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. I've always said I can't really deliver training. I still do it. Don't know why, but they needed that assertiveness from me to say, stop it. This is what I am here for. I had someone on a call saying, I need to deliver training. I don't know what to do. I don't have the time. And I'm there on the screen waving at him and doing this. And he's like, what? I said, that's my job. That's what I'm here for. That's my role. I'm here to support you. Let's have a conversation about it. And it's amazing how naturally that didn't come about for some reason. So I am on my own. Yeah. But sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it just the first thought that came to my head when listening to that is like, there's an element of sales and marketing, isn't it? Internal sales. You gotta sell yourself, market. You put your stall out there and say, look, here's L&D. This is what we do. Shout about it. Get it out through all the comms channels. This is what we're here for. This is how we can support you. And like do a roadshow of some kind, virtual or in person.
Yeah, marketing on two levels. The internal marketing, and I've learned this recently from building a relationship with some great people who deliver L&D marketing, and internal but also self-marketing yourself is so important. But that goes back to what we're saying about all of this. listening, having conversations, just being human about it. Why would I want to send 5 emails in a conversation where I can say, look, let's just jump on a Teams call, let's just have a chat.
100%.
Let's go grab a coffee, tell me what's wrong, let's work together. And building those relationships up, we're in such a unique position that we cater for everybody, so we can get to know everybody, and everyone's learning the way they like it, where they don't like it, what they need, what they don't need, all these different things, rather than just being siloed to one team. And I think there's so much power behind conversations that for some reason we just don't do it. And I don't think I could ever work for a company where we're just admin, where training requests come through, you find it online, send it back to them, and that's it. That's not how it works in my eyes. We are personable. We are there to help people and support people, and you can only do that by having conversations.
And it's a great one. And actually, absolutely. Arif, any perspective to add? I think you wanted to say something.
No. I really enjoyed hearing the answer. That's it. Really.
As did I.
Thank you.
But actually, there's something interesting we talked about, Sam, before the actual webinar, which is you've talked a lot about role modeling. And I found this a very important topic and a very interesting one when it comes to L&D. So what I wanted to know is, like, what's your perspective there? How can you become a role model in your organization?
The answer to where I failed is that because, well, not failed, had failings, shall we say, is because I'm a one-man band. I'm a one-man band learning and development function. So everything that came out in the first year regarding learning had me plastered to it. So naturally, people are going to build up resentment. Oh, here's another thing from Sam. Here we go. So what I should have done earlier on, and I did with little pockets, is you find your champions. Yes. You find the people who appreciate and value what you do. You get them on board. You have their name attached to things. You showcase what they've done, which you might have been part of, but you get them to role model good learning and what they've done and what they've supported. And you can't do it all yourself. And actually it makes life easier down the line because you can rely on them. And finding those champions is something that I should have done earlier. I've got them now and I know them. I can pick them out easily. But I should have done that a long time ago. So I'd say if you don't know who your champions are to be your role models, go and find them. You probably know who they are, but have those conversations to say, look, could you give me an article or something that you've looked at recently that I could share with your name and say, look, this is from so-and-so. And this is what I did in my learning development update. I said, I'm building out a monthly update now. It's now more magazine style. It's meatier, it's chunkier, but I don't want it all to just be from me. I want people involved. Can you contribute? Those contributors, it opens the doors for people to go, oh, well.
That's what L&D is.
So I definitely think, and one of the last thing, I'm conscious of time as well, but the one thing I've said as well is finding the why.
Yes,
is so big. Why are you actually in that role? Why do you get out of bed and go and asking the same questions? Why do you want to learn?
Really good.
What does it do for you? And then sharing that and finding those people is invaluable.
Find their why, right?
I love that. And I think that going back to the previous one, sales and marketing, again, that is a critical, I think, skill around testimonials. They work. People buy into that because it's like, as you said, Sam, it's not just Sam saying it. It's, someone else has said this is really good, so there must be something in it. Or case studies, or like experience of people saying, no, I went on this course and I really enjoyed it, and this is why, and I learned blah blah blah. And people just buy that. That's how it is. Storytelling at the end of the day as well. So
it is.
Yeah, really, really good point.
And I think this is a great thing to like end on. But before we fully depart, storytelling is actually something we do quite often. You might or might not know that we're actually running a podcast and we're releasing an episode every Friday. So Arif, why should people tune in to our wonderful podcast, Leading with Agility?
Well, more stories, more guests, more people, like interesting people to talk to. We're always, having fascinating conversations, not just about L&D, but around leadership more broadly as well, because that's what we like to talk about. And we actually had this week's episode, we had a leadership development manager from Maersk, well-known shipping company, and she's doing some amazing stuff, creating learning environments beyond the classroom. So if you're interested in that kind of more about this, go and download the latest episode. Please do. You'll enjoy that conversation. And we have plenty more others coming up in the coming weeks. So yeah,
we
there you go.
absolutely do. And as Sam says, it's the power of the conversation. So Sam, if people want to hear more from you, where is it that they can find you?
There's not many places. LinkedIn's the best one. I do throw the odd article up, and I've been on a few other sort of podcasts. I'm here, but please reach out. I've had numerous conversations with people just having a chat and just sort of reflecting, thinking about what they do and seeing a different viewpoint, and happy to have conversations. Honestly, it's the thing that really gets me going.
Connect with Sam on LinkedIn. There you go.
And Sam's profile is obviously on this event, so you'll be able to see what he's publishing and connect and message him. Definitely was a great connection for us. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's been a brilliant time, and from what I can see in the chat, people really enjoyed it. Hopefully, the audio problems have subsided, and if you want to go back to the recording, it should all be fine. So it's all worked out, and it's been a great time, Sam. I'm hoping that quite a few people will reach out for a conversation. I would like to thank you for being here, and hopefully you've enjoyed it too.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
and
Sam.
Have a great evening, everyone. It's been a pleasure hosting you, and we will see you soon for the next episode of Leadership Development with us, Humble Associates, and our wonderful guests. Bye-bye.